A happy new year to you and welcome to our very first Kaleidoscope for 2025. So, on the show today, we take a look at both 2024 and 2025, find out about new tax reforms, and enjoy New Year's Eve celebrations from around the world. Don't forget, Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Do subscribe, follow, and like us for more. A prosperous new year to our wonderful partners on the show, Srilanka Life, CDB, and The Daily Morning.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EV vehicles.
So here's taking a look at last week on CDB Snapshot. Moody's upgrades Sri Lanka's long-term currency issuer rating to CAA1 from CA, and the outlook remains stable. Sri Lanka's overall rate of inflation increases to negative 1.7% in December from November's negative 2.1%. 2024 was a record-breaking year for Sri Lankans going abroad, with Kuwait holding top slot. Sri Lanka Customs holds a record-breaking revenue of over 1.5 trillion rupees in 2024. Kamindu Mendis, who equaled Donald Bradman's 13-innings mark to reach the 1,000-run milestone, and Chamari Atapattu, a top 10 player in the ICC women's rankings with over 1,000 runs across all formats and a scalping of 30 wickets, have been nominated for the ICC Men's and Women's Cricketer of the Year award. Donald Trump is Time Person of the Year for 2024. In Virginia, an owl flew down a chimney and perched itself on top of a Christmas tree.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
And here's Srilanka Life News Capsule. With the ring of the new year, we have some new tax reforms to contend with. In December, the government introduced new tax reforms to personal income tax and corporate income tax, as well as VAT, withholding tax, among other areas. We called in our regular tax consultant on the show, Principal Tax and Regulatory at KPMG Sri Lanka, Suresh Perera, to dissect the more important areas. What are the implications for personal and corporate tax when it comes to the new tax measures?
Yeah, with regard to the personal taxes, we see the personal relief of 1.2 million, in other words, 1 lakh a month, going up to 150,000 a month, in other words, 1.8 million a year. So there will be there are persons who will be going out of the income tax net. People who are getting salaries between 100,000 and 150,000 will not be liable for income tax anymore. So that's a relief. Then in addition to that, we also see that the slab, that is the first slab of income, has been widened. Earlier it used to be 500,000, which was liable at the rate of 6%. Now it's not just the 5 lakhs, it's going to be 1 million. First 1 million will be liable for tax only at the rate of 6%. And the 12% progressive rate has been abolished, and up to 36% there will be, not up to everybody, whether you are rich or poor, from there onwards is getting a tax saving. So tax savings starts from, say, 71%. The first category will receive tax savings of 71% to, in a decreasing percentage, all the others will be getting it. So you can see basically this is not a case of giving relief to the low income earners by taxing or increasing the tax liability of the high income earners. Everybody is getting a benefit here.
Tell me about VAT.
There is no rate change, but at the same time I think there was an election promise that was given. They will try to give some relief in relation to the for the people in relation to this high VAT. So what we see here is there is a proposal to exempt milk and yogurt. Could be even dairy products going forward. We have to wait and see what will be exactly enacted into the law to be exempt from VAT. Would the prices of milk and yogurt at the marketplace go down because of this exemption? In the Sri Lankan VAT Act, there is a lacuna. There is no anti-profiteering clause. So, though there is a benefit given to the traders by exempting this product from the VAT, would the traders pass on that benefit to the consumers by reducing the prices?
And what is the impact of the increase of withholding tax, which everyone's talking about?
First, we have to understand that withholding tax is not a tax. What the president said is the 5% withholding tax will go up to 10% rate. So, that's a rate change. This will not result in an individual or person's income tax liability going up. Liability is different, the concept of withholding is different. Withholding is a concept of collection. We pay our tax liability, we discharge our tax liability in two ways. Withholding mechanism and also self-assessment basis. So, for instance, let's say my rate is 36%, 5% is deducted by the bank, and I still have to discharge the balance. That means 36% minus 5, 31% I have to pay on self-assessment basis on quarterly basis. Now what is happening is that 5% will go up to 10%. So 36 minus 10%, I still have to pay 26%. So this will actually introduce efficiency with regard to the tax collection by the Inland Revenue Department, but there is no impact with regard to my tax liability. My tax liability remains the same. The President in his speech pointed out withholding on the interest. Whether this will be confined to interest or whether this will get extended to other categories is what we have to wait and see, because 5% withholding rate is applicable not only on the bank interest. Right now it's applicable on service providers who are providing services, also individual service providers like the doctors, the lawyers, engineers, etc. Will they also experience 5% of withholding going up to 10% is something that we have to keep our fingers crossed to see when the law gets enacted, whether that category will also be subject to the 10% rate.
And in our market sketch this week, the market gained around 50% year-on-year, and banks, diversified financials and capital goods sectors saw the most investor interest, with average daily turnover levels increasing to between 7 and 8 billion rupees towards the end of the year, with the all-share price index crossing the 15,000 mark for the first time in history on 23rd of December. Year-on-year, oil prices fell around 3% in 2024, slipping for a second straight year as the post-pandemic demand recovery stalled, China's economy struggled, and the US and other non-OPEC producers pumped more crude into an already well-supplied global market. Oil closed the year at just below $75 per barrel, and expectations are that prices will remain around $70 per barrel level during 2025. Gold prices closed at above $2,600 per ounce in a record-breaking year as robust central bank buying, geopolitical uncertainties and monetary policy easing fueled the safe haven metal's strongest annual performance since 2010. The film world had some great movies in 2024. Here's the top 10 movies for the year. As we enter a new year and look back at the last one, it's safe to say that 2024 was one for the books. Political upheaval, economic turnaround and social change were hot topics across the board, not just in Sri Lanka but around the world. And now the question is, what's next? Here to dissect the year past and lay down predictions for the year to come is scientist, conservationist and public policy advocate Rohan Pethiyagoda. Quick recap of 2024 for Sri Lanka.
The elections dominated the story of 2024, as you know, and so we can go into that later. But I think the thing that struck me most through the year was the desperate attempts of the last stages of Ranil Wickremesinghe's government to claw in as much corrupt money as possible. We saw the immunoglobulin scam at the beginning of the year, and the minister responsible is still in remand. And then we had the WIN scam, the passport scam, the visa scam, one scam after another where the government was trying to collect money. We seem to have forgotten the fact that he enacted this Personal Data Protection Act, which is really anything but that. It is a data suppression act that seeks to stifle public conversation through the electronic media. And I hope the NPP government will rescind this act in toto, because it is the most foul and odious piece of legislation that could have been conceived by that government.
So going into 2025 again, what lessons learned to be Sri Lanka take from here going forward?
The thing that I would have seen as a lesson learned in the past few years, because I was deeply involved in it with this Adani wind power scam, is the huge personal influence that Mr. Modi is trying to exert on countries like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And as his power wanes in India, this is palpable now that his authority is slipping away from him and he might not survive the next election. He's not going to accept that. And one way in which to build popularity, whether you're Vladimir Putin or Narendra Modi, is to be tough on your neighbors. So I can see him throwing his weight around a lot more in Sri Lanka. He's also dealing with an inexperienced president in the form of AKD. And so I think AKD's relationship with India is going to be one of the things that will define the success of his presidency. He has to navigate that with a lot of care and caution. So 2025, I think, is going to, on the one hand, economic stress, on the other hand, huge possibilities and potential for wiping out corruption, increasing government efficiency and constitutional reform. Those can dominate the narrative of politics for this year if he does it right. And also managing India without getting into conflict or disrepute with Mr. Modi.
What does Sri Lanka need to be aware of?
I think people need to be aware that there's nothing much to expect from this government when there's the usual largesse in terms of handouts, big public projects. There's going to be no Mattala Rajapaksa Hambantota port, highway building. This is out of the question. So don't expect any of that from this government. They can't do it. They've got to deal with the legacy that the previous 20 years of debt have given them. Because remember, the other governments did all the spending and stealing, and now these guys have to sort it out. It seems rather unfair that you get an honest government that wants to do the right thing, and then they can't do it because of this legacy of debts that they've inherited. So I think Sri Lankans have to aim low, hope that private sector growth will get up to speed. Tourism is looking really good this year, which is fantastic after many years. So we need stability. So we don't want to see protests. We don't want to see anything that will destabilize tourism. And I think slowly we'll get up to speed if the tea industry can get a little momentum going and try and pick up on their losses over the past 5 or 6 years after the fertilizer scam, all the way from Maithripala Sirisena in 2015 to Gotabaya Rajapaksa in 2022. Agriculture was badly hit because of stupid policies. So there's a lot of recovery to be done, and this is a good year, 2025, in which to do that recovery.
In a nutshell, what is 2025 looking like for Sri Lanka?
I think we're going to see economic growth bounce back. I hope it's not going to be too good, because we've got this terrible debt restructuring agreement where the better the country does, the more we've got to pay back. And that seems to be totally unfair because we are not incentivized to perform. But I think we will perform, and we will be punished for it by the debt scheme, but we can't help that because this is something that it's a done deal. So we've got to live with that. But I think this is a good year. I think you'll get to 2026 feeling that the whole struggle of 2022, the Aragalaya and the idea of a system change, has at least to some extent happened.
The magic of New Year's Eve is felt around the world, and we take you to some of the most exciting Happy New Year! We'll see you next week.